My name is Heady. I'm with Slide Consulting. I've been developing a FileMaker for 34 years now. I was paid to build the very first thing I built, and I've been being paid ever since, so that's awesome.
I love it.
That's, pro bono stuff. So. I'm a certified developer, and I used to be a trainer when they did that. I'm about to celebrate my 32nd wedding anniversary. I was married on Leap Day.
Hey, nice. Congratulations. So you've been married for 120 years.
Yeah, my joke used to say that by the time we got the 7-year itch, it would be, too late. It happened, and I was like, oh, I want that joke. I don't mean the bad thing happened. I meant we got that far, right? We got that far, so. In case I forget to say this at the end, if I get busy, there's a booth for Slide, a pretty good booth, on the opposite side on this floor over there. So after the session, I'll be over there a bit if you need to talk about something. So, okay. So this is an introductory class. There are 2 sessions on transactions, and I give you the information at the end about the next one, but it's a more advanced session. So this one is a building block kind of session, okay? So if you don't know what a transaction is, you never started, you're in the right place. So what's a transaction? So for a database transaction, it's a sequence of one or more operations that we want to treat all as one. We either want the whole thing saved or none of it saved. We don't want to end up with partial data up to the server when somebody kicked out a cord or you lost your internet connection or anything like that. So if you Google it, you will find this acronym ACID, and it gets very technical. It's atomic and consistent and isolated and durable. And I give you all the definition here, but the truth is, don't worry about that right now. What we want to worry about is when we submit data, we want all of it to go at once. So that, for example, we have an invoice and we have all its items posted from FileMaker Go. Right? We don't end up with an invoice and just a few of the items and I lost my connection and now it's a partial invoice up there. And the support staff or the technical staff is going to start acting on it, right? They're going to bill them already and I didn't have all the items on it. I also have when you download the materials, there are PDFs of the slides. I have them slide full page, but I also have it with my notes. And my presenter notes might or might not match what I actually say, but we'll do the best we can.
Is that on community?
Yeah. I think, didn't they tell you at the first session where to download?
No.
Okay. There's a place where you'll be able to download slides, download the demo files on the show, and they're completely unlocked. You'll be able to play with them. Okay. So first, old school. I can remember.
I love it.
I love this. My slide there, I had a picture of the box from FileMaker 3, and the design review came back and said, your picture's fuzzy. And I was like, yeah, because they didn't take high resolution pictures. So I found this one. This is actually a picture I found on eBay. You could buy this for $20.
Picture?
FileMaker Pro 3 was released in 1995. And at that point, it became relational. Can any of you older like me and can remember when it wasn't relational? Yeah, that's right. That's right. It used to look like a spreadsheet, like one table of a spreadsheet. That was it, in terms of how many tables you could have and how they could relate. But then with FileMaker Pro 3, it became relational. And in a sense, when it became relational, it also became transactional. Because you can have a portal, you can make edits in the portal, and when you commit that record you're viewing, it also commits all the records in the portal as one transaction. So if you tell me, I don't use transactions, I'll bet you do. So, but with FileMaker Pro 3, that was the scope of a transaction. One window, at that time we only had one window. One window, one layout, one record. If you flip to the record, it would commit. If you move to a different layout, it would commit. If you went to a different table, it would commit. Okay? So you got that in your head? One window, one layout, one record. Okay. You can make your experience transactional. Have you seen this little in this? Pay attention to this. Save records automatically. It's checked by default. But if you uncheck it, you can make it where it actually asks the user, do you want to save this change? And they can say no, and it'll roll it back. So it's transactional in that way. Okay. Skip that for a minute. So in the folder you download, there's a demos file folder. Oh, wow. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a small enough room. I was originally going to blow it up bigger, but I think we're okay. I can do some zooming in if you need to see code.
Don, I'm sorry, I have a really quick question.
Yeah.
So if you say no, don't save it, does it erase everything or can they keep working and then save it later?
You can either save or
Revert?
cancel or revert. It depends if they have user aboard on it. So anyhow, I'll show you. You'll see in just a second.
It depends.
So ask to say, it depends. So ask to save, that's our first set of demos here. Okay, so I'm gonna make this one. I'm gonna zoom in a bit.
Doesn't
We
look-
don't have to try in. Is it too small?
That's the way
I think so. I think it's gonna be too
I
small.
see the gray.
Is it great? Let's see if I break the fancy presenter. That's better.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I might have to juggle things around a little bit when we turn on the web viewer, but I mean not web viewer, the debugger and the data viewer. Okay. Like that. Okay. So if I just start making changes, I got some changes there. This is a portal where it says tasks off to the side. That's a portal with some checkboxes on it. I check that. And then if I click in the background when it's time to commit, FileMaker's going to show me this message. Okay. So I have my choice. If I cancel, it's going to leave it in editing mode. It's not going to have saved yet. It's not going to have reverted. If I say save, it'll save the record. If I say don't save, watch closely. The changes are gone. Just reverted the record. And this is the same as if you go up to records and you hit this menu item at the bottom here, revert record. So you can do that even when auto save is turned on. You, as a user entering it, you could go up and pick records and revert and undo your change. Now I kind of think that dialog isn't so pretty that FileMaker gives us. So you can do this. So there's a little, in the lower right corner here, I've got a button for a different version. It's the same thing, but the difference is I've added a little bit of schmeals, a little fanciness to it. So if I make the same kind of changes, as soon as I make any change, notice up here, I get a couple of buttons for cancel and save. Okay, so I can do some things. If I want, I can cancel. If I make a change, I can save it. Buttons disappear. So I tried to give you a little cheat sheet down the side here of what I did to make this happen. So the first thing I did is that little checkbox, I turned it back on. I turned that little checkbox back on. And then I added the buttons, and the buttons are configured here to hide if the get record open state is 0. So if the record is not open where somebody's editing it, then it hides those buttons. That's on both those buttons, okay? And then when you save, it's going to run a script. But the other last thing you have to do is add a script trigger to each field that they could change. It can be the same script trigger that it calls. Sorry, the button and the label, the field and the label were the grouped. There we go. So on object exit, I do this trigger refresh window. That's all it's doing. It refreshes the window so the buttons will show. Does that make sense? So you just put that guy on every field that they can enter. Yes?
Is that on object exit also on the checkbox, or are you using a different trigger for the checkbox?
It's a different trigger. Good catch. Because it's a checkbox, not because it's in a portal. It's on object save for that one. It's still doing the same trigger script, but it's on a different action, on a different object action. Okay. So you've got that piece, and then the last little piece is right. None of them. The trigger script's down here. So it's a very complicated script. I tend to be a commenter. I try to do it kind of in outline form. I try not to be too verbose, but I have found over the years that sometimes the person I'm talking to is me.
Yes.
Future me, right?
Yeah.
In 3 years, when I'm looking at it and going, oh my God, what was I thinking?
3 days.
Right? So it could be for other developers maybe that are going to come on the project later, but it can also be for yourself. And the comment will tell you what you intended to do, not what you actually did. That's always a good thing to know. What was I trying to do? And then you figure out quicker if you got a mistake in there. Okay. Oh, there's a home button up in the corner, a little house. That'll take you back to that menu. Okay. Okay, so then developers began to realize that, we got more tools. We could script a transaction. Frankly, I don't remember which version it came in. But open record request, commit record request, revert record request. These are script steps that we have. So we could start to control that. And then you combine that with your field navigation and your controls and the navigation steps, and you can write some powerful scripting to create records as a transaction. Manually, okay? You can even developers begin to realize that instead of just being, I'm on the company and I'm also editing all their addresses and then I save, well, what if I want to change the name of the company because they changed their name, and I want to update all the open work orders and jobs and everything where I've cached that name so my find performed well, right? Well, now I have to go to another context, usually. Am I going too fast? I see some wrinkled brows, so I'll slow down just a touch. So let's say that they changed their company name. I want to update it on my open invoices, my open jobs. I want to put the new company name or the new address, something that I have cached, meaning I'm not just looking at the address through the relationship or the name through the relationship. I actually made a field with the name so I can index it so my finds can be faster. Well, that's a whole more complicated context. So we began to realize that we could make a transaction table. That's the name of the table, or whatever you want, but I call it transaction. And through global fields, I could relate to anything I wanted. And then I can have portals, and I can create things, and I can delete things from this special context I've created. I'm in a transaction, and I can create records through it, and I can delete records through it. And they don't have to be records that are naturally related to each other. So it could be all the jobs that were assigned to Sally, and now Sally's gone, and Martha's been hired, and I need to put that name on there. You see what I'm saying? Are you getting the idea of the problems you could solve? So this is still old school. So we would make a transaction record. So a transaction table. At Slant, we developed an anchor buoy. So that means you base a layout on the left side, and you just make little togs, little table occurrence groups for the context. So I would never make a layout on any of these green ones or the white one. I would only make layouts on the anchor. And then you start inheriting the name. So transaction insert is inherited, but this is for the parent table, the child table, and the grandpa table. I'm just talking relationships. So old school. Okay. I originally made this demo, I believe, I've been trying to figure out what year, but I think I started it in the year 2002. I made this demo. I've used it a few times and I keep sprucing it up a little bit, but I just want to briefly show you what you would have had to do. So you would have specific table occurrence groups, right? Or you can relate them for delete. You can relate them by a global field. Where on the left on the transaction, I have a global, and I'm relating out to one or more grandpas and their parent, the parents and the child. So I'll show you real quick. So if I were to insert, I'm going to insert data, but to save me from typing, I've got this button where it'll just create the records for me. Okay. So what it's done is it's made a grandpa record. Let's see, turn on. It's made a grandpa record plus over here, plus parents and child. Okay. And this is FileMaker's just revert button. So that's just fanciness so I don't have to type data. It's not part of what's important. But I can choose not to save it. Then that didn't save. If I want to, I can save it. Now I have, this is my choosing a grandpa, and then I see all of their parents and children. Okay. For deleting, I can choose any of the grandpas I want, or grandparents I want, and so I see that grandpa's been selected, their parents and their children have been selected. Here's the IDs, the list of IDs that have been selected. And if I choose to delete the transaction record, it's going to use cascading delete to delete those children also. The grandparent, not just the grandparent, but the grandparent and their children in there. Okay? I can even pick multiple grandparents. So now I've got two grandparents selected and I see all their parents, all their children, all their keys. If I delete, it'll delete it all at once. Okay, getting the idea? Okay. I'm going to double back because I missed the magic key. So I want to show you real quick. Have you ever heard of magic key?
Yeah.
So magic key is the idea that if I am trying to create a record through a relationship, in this case, it's relating this green global field here to the node. That's the idea of the node. FileMaker wants to keep that working. So if I don't have anything in that global field, but I go into this node and I make a note record, I just fill in a number, I fill in some text. Notice that all of a sudden the global field is populated, and that's because FileMaker will pull back the ID into the global field. So it pulled back the primary key, the serial number of this note record, into the global field so that it made the relationship whole. It's an important concept because it's a way that you can create new records through a relationship, get the ID back, and then maybe go do something with it. Maybe you have to add other children to that node, like an image in the image table.
How did it do that?
Yeah.
How did it do that?
Magic.
Okay. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. Okay. This is my own way I do coloring. Some people color it for tables. I find it looks like a clown car if I start doing that. I prefer to use colors to tell me something I don't already know, that I can't see in the name easily. So for me, I use red to say cascading delete is supported, green to say I allow creation through the relationship, and purple if both are true, which is kind of the sort of the mix of red and green, kind of. Okay. So for task, it's purple because it both supports cascading delete and new creation. Here's what I mean by cascading delete. These little check boxes. Okay, that says if I delete a record over here, it'll also delete the task record. So back to node. So I had to turn on allow creation in the portal. And then I had to make sure the global field was empty. Okay, so I had to have my global field empty, and I just had to turn that on for the relationship. And boom, it works. That's it. Okay? All right. Go back to that. Okay, so review. Transaction context is one window on one layout in one record. That had been the case for 27 years. Now we're to new school. FileMaker 19.6 came out, and it introduced 3 new script steps. It did more than that, but it had these 3 script steps in it. Open transaction, commit transaction, and revert transaction. And these steps make it so much easier to perform a transaction. Open transaction and commit transaction work together kind of the way like
Open record.
no, not open record, like if and then end if, or loop and end loop. How you can't have one without the other. They have to both be there, and then there's stuff that happens in between, and that's the transaction. Okay? And then revert transaction lets you revert it when you've done some business test or something. Okay? The thing that makes this different than just a loop is open transaction and commit transaction is that any of those steps in between, if FileMaker says, nope, you can't do that, this record's locked, there's some problem, okay? It's going to just automatically revert for you and jump your script step down to commit transaction. It's going to just drop you down. It's not going to run you through those steps in between. Kind of like as if we had put our own exit loop. If you've ever done that, I'll show you. I can see a wrinkle in your brows, but I'll show you. That's fine. It also added a couple of functions that are helpful. So get last error location came in with 19.6, and then with version 20, which they named the whole thing 2023. It's version 20. Get transaction open state. That's really useful because now you can check if you're in a transaction or not. You'll know why in a second. So our transaction scope changed. It's still in one window. Still in that one window, but you're not limited. You can leave the layout. You can go to other records. You can go to layouts for other tables and make changes, and it's all still open in a non-commit stage. Okay? But here's the catch. It has to be within one running script. The script could be paused, but it has to be one running script. Uh-oh, I see you winking at me. That's the main catch. It can have subscripts. We'll talk about those in a minute, but how it performs with them, we'll talk about that too. So I told you about, so get last error location will return 3 values with a carriage return. Okay, it'll return the script name that had the error. It'll return the step name, which would just be like set field or replace all or something like that. And it will have the line number. You know how inside the scripts they have the little numbers next to it with the lines? So it'll tell you what line you were at when it happened. And then you have, like I said, get transaction open state, which is just Boolean. So it's 1 if you're in a transaction, 0 if you're not. Okay. Home. Your transactions, okay. That's way. So for these, I want to have the script debugger open. I want to have the data viewer open. I've preloaded the data viewer, my little watch panel on the data viewer. Okay, so I have get transaction open state as the first one, get last air detail, and get last air location. Okay, so here's the first test. These are not scripts that are going to show you, like, here's a big way you can do this. Here's some challenge you can solve with it. They're going to show you how these steps work. That's the goal. If you want to see some good examples, come to the session tomorrow. Okay? You'll see bigger examples about how you can use it. So, basic transaction. Button called our script. You see the steps okay? Should I zoom in some? Okay. So we have open transaction is highlighted. That's where we're at. But there's also commit transaction here. And everything in between is our transaction step. Here, I'm going to hang on a minute. That when I turn on and off. Let's stop for a second. Flip. Which one of these is active? One of them's meant to return an error, the other one doesn't. So, okay. Basic transaction. So what it did is it made a new record. But again, because I hit the green button and it went fast. Okay. It's going to make a new record. It's going to set that number field, named number. It's going to set the note field with a value. And then it's going to commit by itself. So I don't have to add a commit step. Matter of fact, if I put a commit step inside here, it just ignores it and keeps going. It'll show you an error here, but it won't stop the transaction. All right. And then I'm just showing a dialog so I can show what I got back from last error, those three things. So let's do this. Turn this one back on. This time I'm set, it's a number field with validation on it, but I'm trying to put so many days. I'm trying to put the word days. I don't know. Okay. Let me try again.
I thought maybe it was some new FileMaker automation you had going.
Sure, we're paying attention. So if I'm making the new record, now this is a different set step. I know it's going to fail because I'm trying to put a text value in there and it's a number field with validation turned on. Okay? So watch what it does. Jumped all the way down to the commit transaction. It did the revert. The record isn't here. Okay. It's going to revert. And look in our debugger. We're still, I'm sorry, it hasn't reverted yet, but it's going to. It jumps straight down to it. So we have get transaction open state is still 1. Our get last error is 502. Right, just a common error. And then here are 3 values we get back from get last error location. Okay. But you'll notice it's about to revert. It's at that commit step. So when that fails, that actually changes what last error location is, because the last error location is actually the commit, which was step number 11 up here. So commit transaction failed at step 11. But if I use last error detail, I can get back that previous error. So 502 happened at line 8. It was the set field step right here. So knowing the line numbers can be really handy while you're debugging initially. I would not suggest that you use it for your error trapping at the end. Oh, if it was at line 9, I'm going to use this message to users when I want to show them a custom message. Because I think it's a little too brittle. It's a little too likely somebody will go in and go, I like a little more white space, and then all your numbers are different, right? Let alone actually changing the code.
So it didn't create a new record because it reverted.
It reverted, right.
So there's no new record,
No
no
new record.
information.
Now, notice I'm on serial number 46. Let's do that one more time. No serial number's been assigned because I set inside of the field definition for it to assign the record, the serial number on commit. Right?
Also, so you don't need to have like the error capture on it either, right?
Correct. Well,
The serial number for the record you created, that rolls though every time, so.
well, it depends which way you have your number set up. That's what I'm going to show you now. So if I have, I'm sorry, that was the, here we go, serial number. So I actually have two fields here. I have a serial number field with on commit. So it only assigns the number when the record is successfully committed, or you have serial number on creation. If you get the number up front, then that number's gone, even if it reverts. Catch the difference?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've had somebody yell at me because they have 3-part carbon PO numbers and it's got to match. They'll make me throw my paper away. These are expensive.
One's missing.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But Don, is there a new best practice then as far as that's concerned? Because like if you're generating an invoice number,
Well,
you know, if your accountant looks and sees invoice 2001, 2003, 2007, they're going to go, what happened to these three? So is there best practice as far as assigning serial numbers on?
I think if I were doing that, I would not make the serial number be my primary ID.
Yes,
Okay.
I would have a UUID
Yeah.
be my primary ID.
yeah.
Okay, you know what a UUID? Okay, all right there.
So the
And I
invoice
would have the
number
serial
be on
number
commit.
be on the back as commit, on commit, and have that be a separate field. And now that's just the serial number of the invoice.
Thank you.
Okay, let's look at that new revert step we have. This thing is really cool when you get into it. So I actually have two transactions in this one script, but they're not nested. You cannot nest. You can't have a transaction within a transaction. Like loops, you can do that, and ifs, you can do that. You can have an if within an if, right? Okay, are you with me about the nesting? Okay. But transactions do not allow that. It won't save it if you try to put another one in it, inside it. But that doesn't mean you can't have two that happen in a row. You do some work, you save it, then you do some more work. So in this case, I've just created it so I can demonstrate revert for you. So I'm opening a transaction, and then I'm going to revert it. Hang on a second, I want to show you this part first. Go here. Okay. At least I can open it. I want to show you the things you get to set for the revert step. So you don't have to put this inside an if, like have a little if and say, if this business rule happened, then I want to revert. You don't have to do that. That's the condition. You get the calculation engine right here, and you can do what you would have put inside the if right here in the condition. So if this condition happens, in my case, I just said true, I just want out. But the result has to be Boolean, 1 or 0. Okay? But you can put the condition right here, and you use these for when you're checking for some error that FileMaker won't think is an error, but you will know it's a business rule error. for your application. So you check the condition, and then you get to set the error code number. Now, I'm doing this deliberately to demonstrate that 3 isn't going to work well. But if I put, I am allowed the numbers between 5,000 and 5,499. I can use any of those numbers, and now it's my own number. It's not a FileMaker error number. That's numbers reserved for you to have your own custom errors. And if you assign that number here, then even just the standard FileMaker number, the FileMaker dialog is going to return your error number. So then it's how you want to use them. You have 499. You can use them over and over again within a script, different scripts. Or you could even have a table where you say, look, I know that this number, 5002, belongs to this script in this file, and I know exactly where it happened. You could do that if you wanted. Or you could you could make your own error table where you describe them in the same way that FileMaker has its error messages. Right? Number 5 means this, number 3 means that, right? 1 means the user exited. Okay? So yes.
Can you use this? I'm really glad to be hearing about this because it's interesting to me. And I wonder if you can use it where there's no CRUD operation. Could you open a transaction, do no change to data, but validate a pile of parameters, for example,
Yeah, you
validate a
could.
JSON, something like that, and then throw custom error messages in response to that validation using this,
Yes, you probably could.
use it as a wrapper for other
I think what we ought to do is put it in a wish request that they take this revert transaction and also make some of those things like bigger in a loop or bigger in an if you wanted. That they give us a new step so we don't have to put this one inside the transaction just so we can use it.
but it's generalizable that way.
Okay, so I told you about the error code, and then you also have where you can say what message it is. So what does that mean? So you both have a number and you have a message. Okay?
So if you have a table of numbers and messages, can you have it so you don't have to type in this box?
You could.
Have it be that relationship?
Yeah, you
If you're on
probably
the
could.
proper doc.
Yeah. Or you can also load them into some JSON or something and put it global so you can access them quick. Barbara, if you hear me say anything stupid, please say so. She has the advanced one later, so I want to make sure you okay. All right, so let's run it and see how it happens. There's 2 transactions here. The first one, I'm giving it the number 3, which is a FileMaker error. The second one, I'm giving it my number 5,000. Okay, so I got to the revert. Nope. Because I gave it an error number that didn't make any sense. That's one of its errors. But if I keep going, I'm going to open a new transaction. I'm going to say revert with 5,000. I have a custom message there. My condition was just true, just revert. Okay. And I get FileMaker's error because I didn't have, I didn't turn on error trapping, which meant I didn't suppress FileMaker's errors. So this is the FileMaker, but notice FileMaker is saying it was a custom script error 5000 revert test. And now that's also what gets returned with get last error detail. Does that make sense? I'm happy for the, so does that mean I can do this? Does that mean I can do that? That means you're starting to grok on how powerful this is. It's really super powerful. Okay.
Question really quick.
Yep, go ahead.
So when you invoke that revert transaction, your script wasn't long enough, I don't think, to see other possible.
Yeah,
scripts.
I didn't
Right.
have already done a bunch of
Will
stuff.
that also jump down to the
Yeah.
commit? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it would do. So if I had a set field do these things,
So whether it's a FileMaker generated error or you, and reverts the record, or you explicitly,
right?
because of your logic.
So
Yeah,
the
and that
first
way it's kinda
error
like
it
it's-
hits,
I'm
so
sorry.
the first error it hits would just automatically go, because this is an error, the whole thing is gonna be an error. I'm gonna ignore everything else.
Right. And it just pops down the bottom. It's kind of like exit loop is like that.
Yeah. Doesn't the case statement work that way too? Kind of exit the first true case
Well,
statement?
that's a function, but yes, it does. It finds the first match and then it doesn't evaluate any of the other ifs, the other portions of the case statement, yes.
Just following an earlier question, you can have multiple revert transaction steps
Yes,
within an open transaction
yes,
commit
yes,
block.
yes. So it's going to use that commit, it's going to use that evaluation of, I just had true, but it could be, does the user have this, external privilege set kind of thing, like special privilege set, or do they belong to this privilege set, or do they have this extra? You could check all kinds of business rule kinds of things that are about your app that aren't about FileMaker, right? Okay, I have some more coolness to show you, so I'm going to try to keep it. Okay, so keep in mind, I told you nested transactions are not supported. If a subscript, if you call a subscript and the subscript has a transaction, FileMaker just puts all the steps into its own. It ignores the second transaction part. It just makes it one big transaction, except right now it ignores the revert steps that are in the subscript. Okay. If there was a commit over there, it's going to ignore that too. Okay, because now that's inside the transaction.
Is it only one subscript deep or subscript?
I think it's subscript.
So it just
If a
comes
subscript
back.
calls another subscript. So I have
It's
the
all
parent.
considered one part of, it's
Yeah,
all
it's all one
inherited by the
transaction.
controlling transaction.
Right, but it is allowed. You can have a parent
It's
script that
allowed.
calls a subscript that calls a subscript. Yep, that's what I
But you
thought.
can't count on revert to bounce you back up.
Right, that's the problem. You can't use the revert,
In the
at
subscript.
least not now.
Maybe I'll get to this, but you mentioned earlier one window. If your subscript spawns another window, does that break it?
I have a show for that. Yeah, it's funny you should ask. A few more things to keep in mind though before I get there. So these things will automatically revert the transaction. If you relog in, if you close the file, if you close the window, it's automatically going to revert the transaction because it never got to the commit. Okay. Save a copy. I don't know why you'd open manage database while it's running, but so. Okay. And of course, if you halt the script, that's going to revert. Also keep in mind that you can, now steps that were not transactional before are transactional if they're inside a transaction. I'll show you one with import. Have you ever had to import data into a temp table because you have to
Yeah.
massage it a bit before you put it in? Well, now you can put in a transaction. If you can just massage it within the table and have it go, oh, it's not successful, and it'll undo it. Ooh, isn't that cool? Yeah. I have an example of that.
A temp record, in essence.
Well, they're just not committed yet. They're in that in-between stage on your computer. They aren't on the server yet. Okay. So, and until you commit the transaction, modified records are not saved to the server. So the indexes haven't been updated. So if you're trying to go do a find and get the one that you haven't yet committed, it's not going to be there yet. Okay? And it will, so then you can't update records found in a relationship. So will not update records found in a relationship. Oh, so if you're counting on an ID, you might not see related stuff. You have to be careful of that. Check that carefully. Okay, more fun. Okay. Go back to home. All right. All right, so our first one is just showing you the subscript, how that works. If I call subscript. So, you see the script steps okay?
Mhm.
Okay. I wonder if it's a temperature thing.
Yeah.
Or based on the angle of the
Based,
sun.
yeah, based on the amount of light coming in. This is AI in practice. Things how much light you want in the room.
I kind of keep wondering if it's gonna reach out and take off my jacket since it knows I'm sweating.
That's the next round.
So we have an open record request, right? So we're opening the record, we're setting a field, and then we're gonna perform a subscript.
Are you serious?
The cloud just went in front of the sun.
That might be a little tight. So then we're gonna perform a subscript, and that subscript will have a revert, but there's also the revert in here. Okay? Zoom out just a little so that we can see.
But
it
the
doing
revert
its thing.
doesn't, it ignores it in the subscript.
Right, exactly. At least right now. We're hopeful that that will change.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's a brand new feature. You find issues and ramifications, and you're like, wouldn't it be nice if we could also do that? So we'll see. But right now, no. Okay, so let's
Ignores every transaction script stepped inside the subscript.
It opens the commit transaction and the revert, yes. But it takes all the other stuff that was inside, you know, because now everything in that script, whether it had a transaction or not, is part of my, right. So it just ignores those steps. So we're gonna open a record, I set a field over here, and then we're going to the subscript. It tries to open a transaction, but I get a 3 error, command is unavailable. But it doesn't exit it, it just keeps going. Now I have revert transaction, that also gets a 3 because the command's not available. Okay? But if I had set a field in there, that did happen. That set field step was executed. Okay? Now we're gonna bounce back. Well, I had a show message inside here. So I saw error 3 because there were unsupported script steps. Okay? So now when I go back to the main script and I'm gonna revert the whole thing, you'll see that both changes I made over here are gone. Okay? And because my revert had 5002, I get to see my error. Okay, and then this is just showing up. Okay, you see how that works with the subscript?
Cool.
Okay. Keep going. What I want to be. Okay, old steps become new. So this one is fun. This is what I was telling you about with import. So we're going to open a transaction. I'm going to import records. In the demo, so inside the demo file folder, there's a little merge file for notes. Okay? I'm going to open it. I'm just going to add them like new records. I'm going to show the status toolbar so you can see that I'm on 10 out of 27 were imported. Okay? Then I set a variable that I called error info. I set that before the step. I did that for myself. So when I get out of a revert, I have more information. When I get down, we have found it helpful to put a set step before to say, here's the error message I want to show if the next thing I do fails. Now I've already got it in a variable. So that way it gets me around the fact that I don't know about the line number. I don't know which of my set field steps failed if I'm not counting on the line number. So if I didn't do just a revert step, this can be a good way to pass information down to yourself. So I reverted successfully. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, it didn't. So it must have to do with what I was erroring.
You're in a subscript.
Nope, not a subscript. Oh, user canceled. Okay, that's what I want to show you. So if in the import step, the user had canceled the import step, I can capture it here. Okay. That makes sense? So that way I'm not doing any of this other processing on the remaining set of records that were previous,
Oh,
right? We
yeah.
want to get out of the transaction because I'm about to do some replaces. All right. So this is my step message to myself. Number field could not be replaced with a one or one or more records. So here's another step that becomes transactional. Replace field contents. Have you ever used replace field contents and then you get that dreaded message, one record couldn't be done?
Right.
Up to you to figure out which one.
Yeah.
You changed all the others for you though, aren't you? Well, now, if you put it in a transaction, if it hits an error on any of them, boom, none of them get updated.
Yay.
Yeah, so this becomes super powerful. Export, import, and well,
That's cool.
import in this, I can see a lot of uses for it. So here's just my replace, random number times 1,000. I'm going to replace. I'm replacing this one too. Then I'm going to commit. Okay, so the new stuff I imported is fine. Now I'm going to run this little button here to lock. So I'm going to open up under here. I don't think we need to see this right now. So there's a second window open and it's locked. It's locked open. Okay. Then I'm going to run that again. All right.
So what are you doing here is just you're locking a record so you can prove that it does work for you.
Yep. So when I go to do the replace,
You normally use this as like a debugger tool, right? Now test your code or?
no, you might actually use it because somebody is quick, and as soon as I imported it, before I could replace and add stuff to it, they jumped on the records and were using it.
Yeah.
Right? Or because I'm doing show all in my case, so it locked one of the original ones.
Okay.
I'm going to import again as a new set. Okay. But, oh, I must hit the arrow, sorry. So when it got to the replace field contents, number 13, it didn't work
Because it was locked.
because it was locked, so it reverted the whole transaction. So those 10 records are gone that I just tried to import again.
Is you either get all or you get nothing.
You get all, you get nothing. The import and then all the massaging was inside. Yes.
Oh, you're
John, if you didn't include that show all, it probably wouldn't have, because it's new records, right? Only we didn't.
Only if, well, if it's new records and it's in a transaction, then they haven't been committed yet. But as soon as those records get committed, other users could jump on them while I'm trying to do my work. So because I put in a transaction, I've kind of protected it, right? And the replace will just revert it when it failed, when the replace failed. Okay.
If a user tries to go into a record that you've locked, what message do they get?
Okay. Let's see.
Something like
Record is in use.
record is in use.
So-and-so is modifying it, we'll say.
Yeah, I just didn't want to give you
An
a
instant, doesn't it? I mean, once the transaction
Here
is
we go.
committed,
Here's the one. So if I'm trying to go into it, I'm trying to edit. It's telling me I can't. Okay? Because I made it where it was a card window for editing. So if I go here, yeah. So yes, that wasn't a good example of exactly what you wanted because I had already put it in a card window and it was protected. But, okay. Oh, the new window one. Hadn't done that yet. I thought there was one left. Okay. I'm going to make sure that on view, I show the view option. I want to show the status toolbar so you can see the record counts. Script debugger. Okay, this one includes a new window set. So I'm performing, I open my transaction. I'm going to open a new window. Okay, so watch closely. I've got 27 records, right? I'm not editing any of them right now. But if I open the card window for the note, see I'm on this one. Then I'm going to set a couple fields. Pause for a second, make sure you see it. Then I close the window. Okay. And now if I try to revert the transaction.
Go down.
Yeah. So I thought it reverted, but it didn't
You haven't
save the changes that happened within.
Try to
the
do
window.
the commit.
You haven't hit commit yet.
There we go. Okay. So it got one of the changes, but not, it got the change that was made in the card window. It kept it, but it didn't keep the changes that were in the main one. So if you open a new window and try to do that, no?
No, you're right. Don't want to open a new window in a transaction.
Yeah, don't open a new window in a transaction.
Unless
Unless
you're
you're doing
logging.
some side stuff that isn't going to be part of the
So-
transaction.
Is it, I hate using the word best practice because a lot of times it depends, but is it sometimes a good idea maybe to open up off screen a processing window if you need to change the layouts or whatever? to
No,
establish-
you can
No.
change layout right inside.
Okay. so do this.
In that window, you can change layouts. That's no problem.
Do you
Layouts, you can change
freeze,
records,
want to freeze windows so the users don't see stuff on it? That's always,
possibly.
okay,
Depends on what you're trying to do.
okay.
But yeah. Are you going to show a bunch of stuff like that, Barbara?
Sorry?
Are you going to show stuff like that?
Yes.
Yes.
You're writing to a pure SQL table using ESS. Will this work?
Oh, I think it does work with the essence.
Bob said it yesterday.
At the
training session.
Training session. Yes. Yes.
So you can change the context within a transaction by switching locations and layouts.
Yes.
But they each run in their own thread in their own window, essentially.
No, you have one transaction running at a time in one window.
Right.
But you can change to a different layout, change to a different table.
Yeah, the context can change, right?
Yeah, so let's say,
You can even change modes. You can go into find mode in the middle of a transaction.
and find stuff. Now, your problem's going to be if you're trying to find stuff that you just changed,
Sure.
right?
I don't count on it.
Yeah,
You can loop and find matching on an attribute,
right,
but it's not in the index yet.
right. So it's not in the index, and that's why it's not finding.
Yes, that's the mental model.
Okay. We're at 2 minutes, and I had more to show.
Scotches there.
Not more demos, it's more like information stuff, So just some tips. I told you about this one, the error info. I find that useful to make myself a little error message before the step that I think FileMaker might really exit. So that's down here. That was, do your work on dev layouts. So if you're going to move around to other layouts, do either dev layouts or blank layouts or both. I find performance isn't too bad as long as it's a form and I only show data that's on that record and not containers and not related records and not calculations and not summary fields. God forbid summary
Oh,
fields.
gosh.
Okay. But if you go to that, if you freeze the window and go there to do your work, you won't have to worry about script triggers hitting when you go to interface layouts. Okay. A lot of developers now are starting to create a whole set of layouts that they just call blank.
Yeah.
And they have no
context
field when
windows,
they do their
no
work there.
fields.
And that's a good way to go. Resources. So Barbara's session is tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning. Same bat channel, same bat room, right here. I'm sorry I gave you all, and Alondra is helping.
Same
The
room,
two of you
same
doing it
time.
together, same room? Okay.
Channel.
Resources. There's the Claire's Engineering blog. If you haven't found that, look up there look at this one and that'll get you into the whole area. The Claire's Engineering is doing some nice content now. So this one works, yes.
Does this work with perform scripts on server?
Yes. But one window.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Because technically it's like server is running a little side client, but it's right there. So yeah, it all works. A practical guide to transactions in FileMaker by ClickWorks. I found this to be a useful post also. I'm sure Barbara will have more resources to share too. So thank you.
Thank you.